Hi, I'm Heather Telford and I've paired up with Grafix to bring you a masked wintry scene. I'll be using prepared Frisket film and Incredible White Mask Liquid Frisket, both from Grafix. Before I start my project, I'm going to splatter some liquid Frisket on my hot pressed watercolor paper. I often do several at a time so that I've got them ready for wintry scenes. Sometimes I dip my brush into the bottle of liquid Frisket, but other times I just pour some on a tray and then press my brush into it. I always put a little bit of detergent in my brush first so that cleanup will be easier later. For these panels, I'm just flicking them with a cheap brush, flicking the bristles against a toothpick to get medium-sized splatter on my panels. I let it dry for 15-20 minutes so that it's perfectly dry before I do any stamping. This is the Extra Tack prepared Frisket film. Make sure you use the Extra Tack. I've been using that for years and it works really well and keeps any water and watercolor paints and inks from creeping underneath the edges. I've cut myself a curvy bit of Frisket film to make a snowbank. I'm pressing the edge down firmly. There is liquid Frisket dried on this panel, little dots, so I want the edge of the Frisket film to be firmly pressed onto the paper so that no water gets underneath. And then I'm positioning my stamp so that the bottom of that tree line overlaps the Frisket film snowbank. I'm using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. It's a nice rich black ink, and I'll do it quite a few times for several reasons. One is there is liquid Frisket on the page, so there are little bumps. They dry kind of a little bit tacky, so there's little bumps of Frisket on the paper, so I have to press it around those. Also, the hot press watercolor paper does have a bit of texture to it, so I need a few layers. And there is that little bit of resistance from the edge of the Frisket film as well. So I just press it in places that maybe aren't as dark as other areas and just make sure that I have a really good print of my design. My design was very detailed too, so all the more reason for extra stamping. While that's drying, I'm going to cut a circle out of a piece of Extra Tack Frisket film. It's a 1 3/4 inch circle, and I just run it through several times because die cutting through plastic always takes a few extra goes, and like you can see that the circle is very clearly cut there, but I just trim a few little bits. If I tried to pull it out, it might tear, so just trim those little edges and then clean off the ink from the Frisket mask on my stamped panel. I'm also just pressing a paper towel against my stamping because remember there are the dots of liquid Frisket and the ink was sitting on top of those. So now I'm ready to add some paint, so I position the moon mask there and again just press the edges of that mask really firmly so that I won't get any color creeping underneath. Keeping things simple for this panel, I'm just using two colors, like a royal blue and a tealy blue, and just filling the sky with those two colors. I'm painting a little bit of water first so that when the paint hits the paper, it will start moving straight away and I won't get any hard edges, I'll just get soft blends. So that's the teal. These are Sennelier watercolor paints. I love them. The colors are really rich and the paint is nice and creamy. And there's the blue. So all my sky is basically just a mix of those two colors, a little bit of teal here, a little bit of blue there, and some blending while it's wet. And as I cover this sky area with paint, you can see the little dots of the liquid Frisket appear, and you can also see how well the masking is protecting those snowy areas and the area of the moon. Don't forget that watercolor paints dry lighter. So if you're really building up some deep color, then be prepared to do a few layers. With a slightly dry, clean brush, I just remove some of the color from right beside the moon so that that would be lighter, with the moonlight shining into that area. And then I'm just adding interest now with some little bits of color, deepening the edges with more paint and just building up a pretty sky. I let that watercoloring dry completely and then remove the hill mask from the lower portion of the design. I do that really slowly and carefully so that it doesn't tear anything. I've used this same mask and paper together before, so I know that it won't tear, but I still remove it carefully. I'm using 2 little deer stamps from Penny Black's Nature's Friends set, just to fill in that foreground area. They're standing in the snowbank. And I'm using the same VersaFine Clear black ink. I'll do a few impressions again just to build up the solid black ink, and that stamping is hitting some of the little dots of frisket. So there are little white dots on the back of the deer, but that will look, when we remove the frisket later, that will look like the deer are standing in the snow. And then I'll let that inking dry before just painting some more snowdrifts in the foreground here. So I'm using the same mix of paints, the blue and the teal, and then just diluting them towards the top of the snowbank with water. Just make sure with a project like this that you let every step dry before you move on. I didn't show any of that waiting time in the video, of course, but I did let the liquid frisket dry, let the black inking dry, let the watercolor painting dry, all that sort of thing, so that you're not blurring any color. And when you're painting those snowbanks, it's good to have a paper towel in your hand to just dab out any extra color, and then you get the really soft blends. Time to remove the mask from the moon, and you can see again that kept all the paint out, and I've got a really clean edge to the moon. With all the stamping and painting dry, it's time to remove the frisket from the sky and reveal all my little snowflakes falling down. I love this step. I'm just using the liquid frisket remover from Grafix. You could use your fingers. I usually start with the liquid frisket remover, and then towards the end I switch over and use my hand, and then I can just feel if there are any remaining dots of frisket that I have to remove. So you can see there I've revealed some of those little dots on the deer, and it looks like they're standing in the snow. Again, carefully remove your tape. I've sped this up. I don't usually do it that fast. And then I trimmed the panel, and that's a snowy scene. I could use it as a Christmas card or just send a greeting during the winter. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you try the liquid frisket and the extra tack frisket film to make some snowy scenes of your own.